Okay, great. I've got 20 minutes to go through a lot of information. And what I wanted to start with is just, I'm going to focus on really two topics, which is climate change and the degree of quickness of climate change, the disruption it's going to have, and the lack of finance to sort of manage that process of climate change. So this is, let's see, this is the amount of money that we're providing in terms of investments, current investments in the world of energy, and the forecasts are, 5, 6, 7 times more in terms of annual amount of money, trillions of dollars. So we've got a huge gap. And what we have here is we all know that climate change is happening, and it's happening a lot faster than we want. And it's going to be a disproportionate impact on different parts of the world. And so that's going to make it really hard and difficult. Oops. So is this? So basically, my issue here is looking at that we basically have market failures, climbing market failures, and we're in sort of the second best solutions in terms of economic speak. And then how do we deal with that? And we've got imperfect financial markets that are not able to deal with this. And also, there's tremendous heterogeneity across the world, and in terms of regions that have different behavior. And we have to kind of look at a much more complex world. My focus here is going to be looking at, given this fact that we've got the market failures and financial markets not working, providing amount of money, how do we then sort of redesign and think about financing what has to be done? And so the market failures are pretty obvious. I think we've all kind of, we economists believe in at least a $200 per ton, carbon tax is not going to happen. So we try to do other things. Certain parts of the world will put that in place, but that's the real difficult thing. And so then in the United States, we come up with subsidies and other ways to do this, and this is the Inflation Reduction Act. And that is kind of the issue that we've got. The other issue is we only hit the top and the net zero commitments is, again, don't think you may feel nice, but you kind of changing over the quicker. And so really doing to attack it, and that's really the challenge. We all know here's what's happening in terms of the emissions. We had a little dip with COVID, but they're still going up. And guess what? The temperatures are going up. So bending that curve is not going to happen fast enough. And so we shouldn't kid ourselves. That doesn't mean to get discouraged, but to kind of how do we deal with these challenges? And again, I've spent a lot of time looking at scenarios and what people have done. They're unrealistic. We still put them out. They work very hard at them, in terms of the peak demand. This is coal going down and natural gas and oil come up. I'm going to be focusing primarily on hydrogen and hydrogen as a portfolio, and then how you do it. Again, as you look at these scenarios, what is really going to be the energy consumption? Now, what they show here is the energy consumption is going down, you get more energy efficient and things like that. Yeah, maybe. So if you step back and look at it, World Bank has said you've got to quadruple the amount of money that's going towards sustainability. And so there's a lot of efforts in the World Bank to rechange their charter. They went through, and then the having choices. That's just one part in terms of the World Bank and its mission. Then if you look at the amount of investment that was done during World War II, during Marshall Plan and everything else, less than 1% of the world GDP. The amount of money that we're talking about is at least 10 times that. Now we can argue whether this is the correct number or not, but that's the level of challenge there is huge. And so we have to get realistic to what can be done and to what extent capital markets can do that. Because countries of governments have a lot of other issues they're dealing with. And here is sort of just taking, these are the estimates that have come out of the amount of money that's needed on an annual basis. $4 to $8 trillion from McKinsey. Again, it's going out of Washington. and based on certain very simplistic sort of how much energy you need, how much investment you need, and they kind of extrapolated that, and we can argue about what that number is, and then the easy part, kind of shit, is guess what? There are differences across less developed and developed countries in terms of their capacity and their needs. And of course, as you know, less developed countries and emerging countries have huge deficits in terms of their capacity to do that. So that's the challenge, and we have competing agendas by different organizations. So the other part that I really want to stress is that we're dealing with heterogeneity today across countries and across players. And the way I illustrate this is the oil and gas industry, because I've got information that goes back 50 years, and you're going to see they've got very different investment behavior, production behavior, and eventually that's going to be true in other technology. And so that basically you can have cyclicality. Here's what we're looking at: cyclicality, the OPEC investors, non-OPEC shale, in terms of investment behavior. OPEC and the OPEC producers have a much higher yield on their investments in terms of what they get in terms of production, and have longer time horizon. Whereas, of course, shale, you see shales right here, it goes up and down, and therefore that means you invest and then they produce, and there's a timing line. You're doing it, and this is any kind of energy investment. You're basically going to have some cyclicality to it. You're going to have expectations to it, and also by the region. Right? And that's kind of the issue that we have here. And again, all I'm trying to do is just, and here we're just showing, here's the investment process, the amount of money that's invested. You know, here's the non-OPEC, here's OPEC, and then we have prices going up and down. So, different behavior by different agents, and whatever this may be, this means this could be, you know, in different utilities and everything else, and therefore we're going to have price volatility. And so we should, and again, I'm just using the energy market because we've got data on them for just a line, is that we have a lot of uncertainty there and not a nice smooth line, which therefore affects how you're going to invest and what you're going to think about investing in. All right. And this is just breaking down sort of the sustainable energy need by different regions. And what you're going to see is huge equities and differences by regions and parts of the world. And again, I'm kind of setting up how we then bridge this. And so, you know, what do we do here? Hit the wrong button, this happens, right? So what I'm doing is just trying to set up the heterogeneity around the world and in different markets and a different capacity for dealing with it. And then I'm just going to focus a little bit on hydrogen and the hydrogen investing, because that's kind of one of the, you know, the current agendas that people are looking at. It's a possibility of that. And again, you're going to see tremendous differences by different parts of the world in their what they're trying to, their targets and how they're doing it. Remembering this information is coming on servers. We don't know really what's going to be involved and things like that. So there's nothing concerning with. You can save the screen. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's kind of setting up heterogeneity. And then my focus is electronics is looking at scenario, and what you're going to find on scenario is they're all wrong. So that's great. I mean, I like this. Unlike many years, we can deal with a 0.1%. I like to deal with 2 or 3 standard deviations. So here is just the IEA forecast. They're all like 3%. And so you look out the way forward, what's going to be the energy demand? That's huge difference, and it makes a big difference in terms of your investment. And if you just look at EVs and charging stations and efficiencies, there are all kinds of things here that make it really hard from an investment standpoint and planning. And by the way, forget about prices. We've been only in pricing. And of course, we make these scenarios in our you know, like, no, let's do it. And so that, and again, I'm just using oil for the basis, but we know that that's true with LNG. We know that's true with EVs. We know that going forward, it makes the investment process really complicated. So, some economists here at MIT and DIW in Germany have done terrific jobs of comparing scenarios, looking at what's going on. What always blows me away is there's 50% of different scenarios between total energy demand and electricity. And again, then you have to look at how good are these scenarios and what do they really tell you, and then by region, how well are they really thought out. I have to think Shell still does a pretty good job with their scenarios. They'll be more detailed, or actually kind of went through that. But again, these are the targets. IEA has an agenda, is that they want to move towards sustainability, and they start from 2050 and move back and say, how do we get to net zero? But they don't sort of go through the structural issues of how to get there. And so this again makes it very hard. And so how do we get realistic about what's happening? And again, we can probably have long sessions and practical on this and try to work out sort of the variability of scenarios. The Shell scenario is kind of getting to the net zero and having to be able to get there. And you know, that's a reasonable risk. And there's the survival of the fittest, which is basically we continue to operate in this fractured, difficult world. And it's really a lot of crises and things like that. We're probably in between that, we as energy economists and figuring out, I can figure out still what makes sense, and then how do you allocate your money to that. So, going on this, how do you invest in a realistic way with lots of risk, lots of uncertainty in long-term investing, and maybe make some money? And I really underline that maybe. And so let's get to, do we have financial markets that are properly designed? My sense is probably not to provide that to the money. And so again, there's a lot of stuff here. What basically it says is, the financing economy is going to be cost of capital. How to get cost of capital left in different countries. Well, guess what? Sub-Saharan Africa has high cost of capital, you don't have money going. And so that's the real issue. And then you get ways to try to manage the cost of capital with subsidies and things like that. Again, are you going to get that kind of money going there for just what you see as the reasonable sustainable investments? And there's probably not in our current structure. And that's and also we make these, if you look at the transition, they make the assumption that somehow we have a world that works together and cooperates and gets along, because that's reasonable. So here is this stuff. How do you make it happen? And this is a problem if you look at the World Bank or IDA, and somehow have this cooperative working together sort of world. My sense is that if you look at this, that's not necessarily realistic. We have competing interests, we have different agendas, we have different social structures in different domains, in different parts of the world. And so how do you deal in a heterogeneous world and make some progress? And maybe make some money. And so this gets to the issue, is energy a kind of sort of part of a public good? I would argue there's a lot of public good there and not just necessarily a market structure. So, and then of course within this we have, if you're looking at hydrogen, you're then saying, well, electricity is also pretty important, and then look at different levelized costs in different parts of the world, and then if you need to invest in electricity, so you got to compute with that. Okay, so let's look at what's going on in just hydrogen as one part of the portfolio. And one part of the portfolio, and the point that Rachel was saying, it's a huge supply chain, right? And so we've got to look at each part of the supply chain, not just getting the hydrogen and turning it into ammonia and moving it like ships or having it be presented. Each part of that is an investment in a training technology and then having a point. And if you look at it, this is not simple and easy. And then what policy and stuff. Saudi Arabia has to that. And they put out a 900-page report, which I read, which basically kind of goes through that. Some of it's going to be blue, some of it's made up to green, and it depends on the geological structure of that. Saudi Arabia may have more genes than that in the structure, they got some money. So, but again, we're just talking a little part, and I'm just using the IEA stuff of hydrogen as being part of this investment. And so it's part of the overall portfolio, but again, based on surveys. And are they reasonable assumptions? Probably not. But you've got to create demand and things like that. And so again, as an investor, you're trying to figure out what to do. Each country now has a lot of strategies. And they're trying to do this, and they decided this is the right thing to do. Bunch of engineers push back and say, well, this is necessarily the right energy efficiency. I don't often to build their head and other alternatives. So let's have the debate. Nonetheless, people are committing to it, and we're talking about it. And this becomes the real problem. How much money? And it's guesstimates. And so, educated guesstimates, and people are trying to do it, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And then this is the McKinsey hydrogen thing. Then if you look at two countries that look like they may have relatively low cost, which would be the USA and Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, some of which they can use domestically and the rest of them they can then export. And so they're trying to get that. So this is what the plan is pushing out there. Again, good estimates, and then you try to look ahead. And what you see is the Middle East has relatively low cost of may get there. $1 per kilogram, and the United States again may with carbon capture get there. And again, we don't have good information on carbon capture. So this is the information that we've got. And this again, I'm just focusing on the United States and Saudi Arabia as two possible, development, high development. China can do it, and so again, at current costs right now, so we're still making some assumptions with carbon capture we can get there, and that this is a viable market. Okay, so we do all that, and their strategies. The United States basically through the the Inflation Reduction Act, which basically says we're going to have subsidies to kind of make this happen, to encourage it, and to sort of make it happen. We're kind of working with the market model. Saudi Arabia doesn't kind of do that so much. They have a relatively low cost of it, and they say we're trying to get to it as much more of a demand economy, but we don't quite know the amount of money that we have. United States would say we need $2 billion in the 5 years. So my question as I step back at this is saying, looking at Europe and looking at going back to World War II, it's basically maybe you have to start thinking about energy bags, and that you're looking at the overall portfolio, and an energy bag basically is pulling together, its investments in different parts of the energy sector, and it's got some equity funds, it's got mezzanine capital, it's all individual capital, and the question becomes, what are the returns that are required? And so this becomes, and again, I'm still kind of hoping, maybe you use a utility model that is trying to say, I'm trying to do it at 10, 12% return, not a 20, 30% return. That is a lot. And so this becomes the issue, but it's really hard to manage that. Germany in particular has said we will subsidize hydrogen and we'll have auction markets and we're going to charge it at a price. Of course, they've got money into the hydrogen bag, you bag, that would be the overall energy. So that's kind of, as I look at this, and all this is doing is just saying there are different stages of capital provided. The idea, as I look at it, stepping back, and the only part of the world that's got a really well-developed infrastructure and doing this is Europe. Everybody else is still some emerging technology and effort. And so this becomes the problem. We understand that this is a decarbonization strategy. And so how do you make it I think he tried to create a larger institution that has, saying, we're dealing with energy, we're making energy investments around the world. Yes, we'll use private capital. Yes, we can raise money. We have to sort of say, we need to move it faster. We're gonna make mistakes. And, just like the market plan and rebuilding, making a little transformational effort. And that's where there are gonna be these disruptions. I happen to think that try to come up with realistic things. Let's try to figure out how do we do this evolving region by which the United States got a different set of capital markets. They may need 2 to 3 trillion over the next couple of years to make this happen on an annual basis. And having capital market, you're going to get a lot of people pushing back, saying, still I make my money. And so Blackstone is going to say, no, 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 I don't want to participate, I want to do it my way. Whereas in the more advanced economies in the Middle East, they have a different perspective. They actually have a social justice, environmental justice perspective more than in the States. And so again, you try to figure out a different structure and figure out what's different. I don't have any answers. I have an approach and rethinking of what we're doing and saying that nice rich and 2050 is not going to happen. It's much more difficult and disruptive, and we got to find a way to mobilize the money we're going to need to have. Okay. Questions, thoughts?
And thank you for very nice perspectives. My question is about so what are your take on the, I would say, how to bridge the gap between the hydrogen, the top-down hydrogen scenarios and plans with what I think is the missing part so far is how to really confirm that that hydrogen technologies work well in the end user part of the chain, because at the moment the hydrogen initiatives are not demand driven. Right. It is production. Right. So that's a big.
No, you're right. And this is the emerging market, which is an early stage market. If you don't know what the band is, you have a sense, at least again, those of you who are more expert in this, there are parts of it in terms of high energy content that may work, but the heating markets and other things are probably not going to evolve that quickly. So this becomes a real issue, and you're absolutely right. You could have 50% difference in the demand creation, and so this becomes a real. This is why I think you need an energy bank rather than a hydrogen bank. You just can't have your single agenda. You have to have a portfolio. But and you got to have smart, knowledgeable people on top of it, like you guys. People understand it's not just politicians, right? Yeah.
It's higher. I think some of the developing countries we might not allow the, I guess, the time.
Yeah.
To experiment. So maybe like but might still need funding.
No, I mean, I think this is where, and again, you go back to, at least I go back to World War II, the creation of the World Bank, that is that you had a huge disruption in the world and it created these new structures. And people are talking about that, but as you notice, they're not funding it, right? And so this becomes a huge challenge. I mean, Asia's got a very different perspective on the developing world, and China and India have a different perspective on how that may be. And I think you have to. I don't really know how you do it. I mean, I'm talking to some World Bank people, but the World Bank has just one perspective. And I think I have to go reach by reach and hold you.
But do you think of it? I mean, this so it's like
yes, I mean, that is something but and you won't necessarily get the only developing world, you're not. And that's what you recognize that when you will see what you really can't.
And they use that where this would be more like more realistic or accurate scenarios like changes. What I'm arguing with is like when you think of the installed capacity of these systems as the investment way to let all scenarios like it's really difficult to tell apart what is more realistic versus realistic. So I was wondering was your approach to
Well, that brings back, and I go back to sort of agent modeling and looking at the different behaviors of agents. The problem is in the new technology, we don't have any information data on that, on the EVs, and it's you know, when we look at EV protection 5 years ago, they thought it was gonna have 60–70% penetration by 2030. No, it's not the case, right? So there's this wishful thinking that goes. I mean, hopefully we have enough hard headed people. That doesn't make it fun, right? I mean, to me, net zero is kind of a happy scenario. And you have to kind of get more realistic about what it is. I don't know how we get there. I haven't been, I need to see the reports. Okay, thank you. My next speaker